Hello and a very warm welcome. Joe Biden is the new Captain America and there's a Kamala blooming in the White House. What will a Biden presidency mean for India and the rest of the world? And what happens to Donald Trump, who refuses to say goodbye? That's what we'll focus on this special edition of the Newstrack over the next 1 hour.
Over this nation, all cities and all parts of the country, indeed across the world, an outpouring of joy, of hope, renewed faith in tomorrow. Bring a better day.
Joe is Captain America. Biden, Harris, Trump, Donald. America turns from red to blue. Kamala blooms in the US. US gets first woman vice president.
The woman most responsible for my presence here today, my mother, Shamala Gopalan Harris, who is always in our hearts. She believed so deeply in an America where a moment like this is possible.
Early Diwali in Kamala's ancestral village. But Trump refuses to concede. What does Biden mean for India? Top Focus at 7 p.m.
After much uncertainty and a very slow vote count, it's finally now clear that Joe Biden will be the 46th President of the United States. And for the first time in its 244-year history, America will have a lady of color in the second most important job in the country. It was Pennsylvania's 20 electoral votes that swung the battle decisively in favor of Joe Biden. 49.7% of the votes finally in Pennsylvania for Joe Biden, 49.1% for Donald Trump. There are two states which are still counting: North Carolina with its 15 votes and Georgia with its 16 votes, where the battle is still very tight. Joe Biden 49.5 versus Donald Trump 49.3. This is an incredibly tight race, but a race that in the end has decisively swung in favor of Joe Biden. But you've got Donald Trump kicking and screaming, refused to go. But what's very clear is that the writing is all across the White House. It's time for Donald Trump to say goodbye and for the world to say welcome and congratulations, President Biden.
In a new era, Joe Biden is the new Captain America, set to become the 46th president of world's oldest democracy, defeating Donald Trump by a record vote. Biden secured most votes ever by a presidential candidate.
The people of this nation have spoken. They've delivered us a clear victory, a convincing victory, a victory for we the people. We've won with the most votes ever cast on a presidential ticket in the history of the nation. 74 million.
After clinching key state of Pennsylvania, Biden made a victory speech declaring that it's time to heal America.
The Bible tells us to everything there is a season, a time to build, a time to reap and a time to sow, and a time to heal. This is the time to heal in America.
US is the worst hit nation from COVID-19, with over 1 crore people have been infected and over 2.43 lakh lost their lives. Biden certainly has tough task ahead.
On Monday, I will name a group of leading scientists and experts as transition advisors to help take the Biden-Harris COVID plan and convert it into an action blueprint that will start on January the 20th, 2021.
Indian-American physician from Karnataka, Dr. Vivek Murthy may head Biden's COVID task force. He was Biden's top advisor on public health during campaign and was also United States 19th Surgeon General under Barack Obama in 2014. Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated Biden, saying his contribution in Indo-US relation is invaluable. 77-year-old Biden will be the oldest United States president when he assumes office on January 20th next year. Biden, who faced Trump's barbs on his age, jogged onto the stage for his victory speech, indicating he's fighting fit, delivering a unity message.
I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify. Who doesn't see red states and blue states, only sees the United States.
As America elects its new president, millions erupt in joy across the country. People from Indian community perform Bhangra on the beat of dhol.
It's a historic day here in America. Crowds have been pouring in all day here just outside the White House. As you can see, people gathering here in a celebratory mood, telling Trump and Pence that it's time for you to go now.
With inputs from Pratiksha Gildial in Washington, Bureau Report, India Today.
So what will a Joe Biden presidency mean for the world at large and for India in particular? Joining us to talk about the next 4 years of the man at the helm at the White House and the global implications, I have first and foremost George Perkowich. He's a vice president at the Carnegie Endowment for International Studies. We've got with us at this time Sadanand Dhume. He's a fellow at the AEI think tank in Washington, D.C. Vijay Chauthaiwala is in charge of the BJP's Foreign Affairs cell. He is the one who sets up all of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's grand public outreaches when he is outside India. We've got with us also a very special guest who's now being called the second uncle of the US. That's because he happens to be the maternal uncle of the lady who will now be the first woman to be vice president of the United States. G. Balachandran joins us, a strategic affairs expert in his own right, but here in a very personal capacity as well. So, Mr. Balachandran, let me first congratulate you. And as somebody who's the closest Indian link we have with us to the new Vice President of the United States, what does this moment mean for you personally, for the family, and for Kamala Harris, who keeps referring to her mother and the role her mother played in taking her where she's reached right now?
No, I couldn't get the question. What was it again, Rahul?
My question is, A, congratulations and welcome on board. What does this moment mean for you personally and for the family to have someone you've known as a relative now being the Vice President of the United States?
Look, it means quite a lot. Obviously, we are very happy. There's no question about it. But I myself expected about a week ago that she was going to win. So it was not a great surprise when the CNN called it last night. But nevertheless, it is a great pleasure for the family. There's no question about it. But so we'll be going there for the swearing in, and those things we'll do.
I hear that your own family members, especially your daughter, has been working hard on making this campaign possible. So give some details about the role that you and your family have been playing in this vice presidency campaign.
Not really. You see, my daughter is in Washington, so she meets Kamala quite often. But during the last 5 days, Kamala invited her to come and join her at the Biden campaign headquarters in Wilmington. So she has been with them talking and eating and having dinner and everything with them. But otherwise she did not really play any major role or activity during the course of the campaign. Okay, she didn't do that because she had her own teaching to do at the University of Maryland. So she didn't have free time, but she used to meet Kamala pretty frequently.
What, according to you, from all that you know, would Kamala Harris as Vice President mean for India along with Joe Biden as America's new president?
Look, the India-US relationship has gone so deep and so far, and there are very few, any major outstanding political issues. There are some technical issues relating to the free trade agreement, tariff and other things, but there are no major political issues which require the attention of the US president or the vice president, as it happened during the nuclear deal. So I do not expect that any such problem will come that will have to go to the level of the president or the vice president to resolve it. And secondly, in any case, the support for India and the US Senate and House is so strong. There again, you don't need the president to cajole or gather enough members of those two houses to support his various acts supporting India. So I do not think that either the election of Biden or Kamala Harris will significantly, it may do minor here and there, significantly alter the course of the India-US strategic relationship.
George Perkovich, there's been a lot of talk about how someone as predictable, as normal, especially in comparison with Donald Trump becoming president of the United States, will mean for America's relationship with India. You study this issue very deeply. What's your best sense? How does this impact America's relationship in an Indian context?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate my old friend Bala on Kamala Harris's victory. It's thrilling in so many ways. As to your question, I also think Bala is basically correct that the underpinnings of the U.S.-India relationship are so strong. They've been built by both parties since basically Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. They've continued. And so I think while there are differences, including over trade and other issues, that there's a commitment on both sides in the executive branch as well as in Congress, as Bala mentioned, to work on these issues in a constructive way. So, it was difficult to understand what the Trump administration's trade demands from India were because they were inconsistent and incoherent. But there will be trade demands in negotiations with India coming from the U.S. side, and there will be from the Indian side as well. So we should expect that's kind of the normal difficulty of trade relations. And then in relations with China, I think the U.S. and India basically see the fundamentals in the same way, and there may be differences on approaches.
Sadanand Dume, it turned out to be a tight election, even if you don't get that sense by looking at the overall numbers, which currently read 290 versus 214. But if you look at the vote share, it's a very, very tight election. What does the verdict suggest about America and the message that the verdict has given to the president in terms of his approach with India and the rest of the world?
So, I don't think this election was remotely about his approach to India. But the verdict says more broadly is that American democracy remains in good health. This is a system that was designed to prevent tyranny. And I think people can argue about the extent to which you could use that word for Donald Trump. But the fact is that the institutions in America have remained robust. And more people didn't like what they saw over the last 4 years than those who liked it. And Trump is going to be out. Of course, he's doing he's an unusual person, and he has not accepted, and he'll probably go kicking and screaming. But I have no doubt that he's going to go. Quickly on the policy question, if I might just chime in, I agree broadly with both Mr. Balchandra and George Perkovich, and that we're not going to see major changes. But I think it would be interesting to see to what extent we have sharp differences between a Biden administration and a Trump administration on their broader approach towards not just trade, but also immigration and also human rights issues. Again, I don't think that these are going to, fundamentally alter the trajectory of India-U.S. relations. But if you pull in closer and look at the sort of details of the relationship, there will be differences, I imagine.
Okay, so let Vijay Choithawala respond to that. Mr. Choithawala, this whole talk of how America may wish to interfere or weigh in on or voice opinions which the Indian government may not like, particularly on certain big policy decisions. If, for example, Article 370 had happened for this moment, that the approach of the Biden administration could be very different from that of the Trump administration. Is that of concern, and how are you bracing to deal with these changes in priorities? Donald Trump cared about import duties on Harley Davidsons. For Joe Biden, the priorities and concerns could be very different, sir.
First of all, again, I would like to congratulate Mr. Balachandran on behalf of all of us for the splendid victory of a Biden-Harris ticket. And for a change, I agree with my good friend Sadanand Dhume, whom otherwise we fight a lot on social media. But apart from it, the interference is a very strong word for any country to do in the domestic matters with India. 370 is gone, lock and barrel, and there is no question of it coming back in any form under pressure of anyone or any country. And I would not say, I would not even imagine that the Biden presidency will do to an extent to call it as interference. There will be some differences of opinion. There will be differences of opinion between two friends. Anywhere we didn't agree with Trump presidency also 100%. So there are mature ways to deal with differences, and I am sure India and US will try to do it in a larger interest of the strategic partnership of both the countries, and also for the geopolitical situation emerging in the subcontinent, in the South Pacific and the Indo-Pacific region, and also overall global strategic partnership.
Mr. Kanwal, simple questions are being asked in India if
so I am not much concerned.
The Modi government weighed in too much into the prospects of a possible Trump re-election, which became that much tougher after the pandemic struck. And earlier, who would have known that something like this could have happened? But did we invest too much in the Republican camp on a presidency of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump coming back, and not enough on the Democrat side? Do you think it doesn't really matter? India and America are close friends, especially with what China is up to. It doesn't matter whether a Republican or Democrat leader runs the White House.
I think this is misplaced criticism, and this is an indirect way to blame Modi for supporting Trump too much. Point is that when two countries are relating to each other with a difficult past, and you have a very unpredictable, impulsive president, you have to try and soften his edges. You have to appeal to his vanity. You have to appeal to his narcissism. And this is what Modi tried to do by having this rally in Houston and then inviting him here. And the fact that the Houston rally took place with a few thousand Indian Americans didn't mean that this was a critical moment for Trump's re-election 2 years later. To my mind, this is fairly nonsensical. You have to find a via media with a difficult president and a difficult country, and advance your interests and soften the edges of your adversary, which Prime Minister Modi tried to do as best as he could. Secondly, there was far greater interference in the internal political process of India when the Republican administration of that time denied Modi a visa to go to the United States. But Modi didn't keep it in his heart.
Sure.
Almost the first country he visited after becoming Prime Minister was the United States of America, because there are larger national interests involved, and you don't let your personal thing come in. And thirdly, when he held this rally in Houston, Biden was not even a candidate. He was not even a candidate. So how can he say that there was anything against Biden or Kamala Harris or what have you?
Sadanand has his hand up. He wants to come in and intervene and interject. Sadanand.
No, let me finally complete that. In fact, we have kept very good relations with the Democrats all through. Why are we talking about a bipartisan consensus? It's because there has been constant interaction with the Democrats, including Nina Pelosi and others. So I think this is mistaken criticism.
Sadanand.
So, Rahul, so let me say that I agree with about 80% of what Ambassador Sibal has said. Obviously, interstate relations are not governed by personal whims and fancies. I also think that it is perfectly legitimate for the Prime Minister to appeal to President Trump's vanity, and that's in the national interest. He's not doing it for Modi, he's doing it for India. So those are both points well taken. Where the criticism arises, where I think Ambassador Sibal is being a little bit too generous, is on the nature of that intervention. So, for example, had he gone and done the same rally, but had not dabbled around on the edges with this very suggestive play of the slogan, Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar, for example, then he would probably not have created a certain amount of bad blood on the Democratic side, right? So I'm not, again, sort of exaggerating and saying that this is something that's going to derail the relationship, but neither should we sort of be Pollyanna-ish and pretend that this was handled in the smoothest possible way. It could have been handled somewhat better, and I think in hindsight, that is, to my mind,
I'm going to let Kanwal Sibal respond to that, but you can say what you have. When he said Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar, he was referring to what President Trump had said himself. But let Kanwal Sibal respond to that.
Rahul. The implication was very clear.
Okay, you're saying that don't go by just the literal way in which it was said. Just look at the context, and the context was he was leaning in towards an Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar. Let Kanwal Sibal respond to that.
Let me reiterate what I said. Do you think that the Democrats would, in their would they ever believe that the fact that Modi said Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar meant that the die was cast in favor of Trump? Of course not.
No.
I mean, Trump could have well won if certain things had not happened, like COVID. He has lost, fine. He has lost through a democratic process. And insofar as interference in internal relations are concerned, what about all these attacks by the Democrats on Article 370, CAA, NRC, and the Delhi riots? Isn't this direct interference in our internal affairs? So let's not exaggerate this. So when they interfere like that, they are actually damaging Modi because there's opposition in the country to what happened, and therefore they're boosting the opposition. This is direct interference. We are not, for example, interfering in America's internal relations by saying, why are you appointing highly conservative judges to the Supreme Court, or your whole election process with this electoral college is anti-democratic. We are not taking these positions. So I think this business about simply one rally where something was said, half a sentence, is so important that it is going to leave a lasting impression on the mind of the Democratic Party. Certainly not. Unless, of course, we say they're totally immature. And its personal peak of a very low order is going to determine the larger strategic relationship. I don't believe it for a moment.
Well, I don't either. We're not disagreeing on that.
So, while on the one hand, you've got the world preparing for a Biden presidency, you've got Donald Trump refusing to say goodbye. He's not hanging up his boots and not leaving the White House. He says he will challenge this in the Supreme Court, that the election has been stolen from him, and that he wants to go down all guns blazing.
Joe Biden is the new Captain America, set to lead the most powerful country as its 46th president.
I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify. Who doesn't see red states and blue states, only sees the United States.
While congratulatory messages poured in from across the world, incumbent President Donald Trump remains defiant. Soon after Pennsylvania's victory sealed Biden's triumph on Saturday, Trump reiterated the unfounded claims of election fraud, vowing to pursue a legal fight while indulging in a game of golf. In his statement, Trump accused Biden of rushing to falsely pose himself as the winner. He asserted that the election was far from over and that people were entitled to honest elections. Trump has repeatedly made allegations of electoral malpractices without presenting any evidence to substantiate his claims.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
Media reports suggest Trump was approached by his son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner, who asked him to concede the closely fought election to his Democratic rival. Biden-Kamala Harris campaign says there has been no communication between Biden and Trump or between representatives from either campaign. Without naming Trump, Biden sought to strike a conciliatory note in his victory speech on Saturday night.
For all those of you who voted for President Trump, I understand the disappointment tonight. I've lost a couple times myself, but now let's give each other a chance. It's time to put away the harsh rhetoric, lower the temperature, see each other again, listen to each other again. And to make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as our enemies. They are not our enemies, they are Americans.
While Trump may have lost the presidential elections, he remains a dominant force in American politics. Bagging over 70 million votes, the most any president has ever won except Biden. He clinched 24 states, including key turfs of Florida and Texas. But with Trump looking in no mood to relent, will we see a smooth transition in presidency? Bureau Report, India Today.
Puneet Ahluwalia has been a Republican candidate for the post of Lieutenant Governor. He is joining us live on this broadcast. Your man refuses to go. In a democracy, when you lose, you say you accept very humbly the verdict of the voters and you say thank you. Where and to what extent will Trump drag this mess?
You know, Rahul, well, you said a word very important, democracy. So in democracy, there's also rule of law and transparency, which was not in this election. And President Trump, the way the media has painted, the way the Democratic Party has painted him ever since he won his election. And apparently, if you look from the American public side and the people who voted for him, which is quite a high number, there's no blue wave still, he basically fulfilled all his campaign promises. And apparently, somehow or the other, I think we are in a conversation where we want to have to sue these medias and social media, big techs, who kind of define this narrative, oh, he's lost or he's gone. Look, there is a process in our country, and that's the law. And it's very transparent. What we want is, if he has lost generally through eligible voters, let that happen. And I think that everybody's in a rush to judgment here. You know, I was hearing part of your previous speech. You're already putting the cart in front of the the horse yet, but it is not there yet. I would say just take a little breather. President Trump is, if you see again, 49% of the people who voted for him. And here is Joe Biden saying, well, I'm going to be friends and I'm a leader for all Americans. Well, for 4 years, you are making life miserable for him.
It doesn't work like that. All of what you're saying sounds like a campaign stump speech. After having said what Trump said and the Republicans did, you're 49%, he's a little, Biden's a little bit more than you. You've lost, he's won. That's life.
Well, again, Rahul,
make peace with it.
That's your opinion. My opinion is, if he has won, let's have a transparent process play out. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anything different. If he has lost, he's lost. But let the transparent process come out. And that's what we want us to do. And it's very easy to be colored by those soft tones and compassionate words, which the Democrats are very good at speaking. But they made life miserable when they were impeaching him on sham aspect of the impeachment of Russia collusion.
George Perkovich, the Republican Party says the Democrats made life miserable for Donald Trump. He can do the same. They're unwilling to pack up and go home.
I think the election process has been transparent. President Trump and his team has not offered any evidence of fraud. It will proceed through the courts. That has not prevented anybody, any of the normal authorities that declare elections, including President Trump's election in 2016, they've declared it. Now, if the president's legal proceedings, which most legal experts think have zero chance of succeeding because there's no merit to them, if somehow they succeeded, then somehow they reverse the election. But otherwise, this is nonsense. And we're pretending somehow that the president's behavior and refusal to depart and his supporters' refusal to acknowledge that is somehow normal, and everybody else should be kind of patient and understanding, except that it's never happened before. I'm old enough to remember the 2000 election, which took, as I recall, 36 days to resolve and was ultimately resolved by 5 Republican appointed justices in the Supreme Court, and George W. Bush won and Al Gore lost. That was many weeks longer than this. It was a much closer election, which, by the way, Gore won the national vote. And Democrats didn't speak any of this nonsense that we're hearing now. They abided by the process. So I don't understand.
Sadanand Dhume, how far can Trump drag this? This has happened in some tin pot countries. It hasn't happened in a country with the kind of institutions that the United States has. Is this just showmanship? Is he serious? Will he just squat and refuse to go? Or, you know, he can say all of what he's saying, but after a few days, he has to pack up and go to his golf course.
Look, this is a person who had great trouble acknowledging the basic fact that more people came to Obama's inauguration than came to his, right? There's tons of photographic evidence. To this day, he cannot accept this. So, I mean, you've got to, I mean, he's a sort of strange person. I don't think he will accept it in the way that he's already and hasn't shown grace. But in the end, he will not be able to change the outcome. So that's the difference between this and between the US and some tin pot country. There's no doubt that President Trump's behavior is the type of behavior one only sees in tin pot countries without deep democratic roots.
It doesn't even happen. It's never happened in any election. In India, Puneet Ahluwalia, where, like, let's assume a chief minister gets booted out and now the hot money is on Nitish Kumar going. He says, no, I think I have done better than Tejasvi Yadav or Lalu Yadav. Lalu Yadav was Jungle Raj. I will not go because I have done really well over 15 years. I am Sushasan Babu. And therefore, I'm here. I'm not leaving.
Yeah, it's a basic building block of democracy, accepting defeat.
And Sadanand, it's fine if we have lost fair and square. That's fine. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't leave if he has lost. What I'm saying to you is let the process play out. Everybody's kind of jumping to conclusion, and you may have a different opinion. And as we individualistic Republicans and conservatives have a different belief, and it's not that we are not have any common sense. We are not looking at the numbers. I'll give you a prime example. My good friend Nick Freitas, who ran for Congress, apparently there were more mail-in ballots that came in than there were votes, and plus there were another few thousand ballots that were yet to be counted, and his race has not been called. I understand this process very well because I'm right in the forefront, and sometimes sitting in the ivory tower, you really don't get the grassroots. You really don't feel what's going on the ground. So I would say and request all your viewers that let's have the thing play out. And again, please, to you, it may be that he is obnoxious, he is who he is, but again, people of America chose him democratically. He's the president. He's the leader of the Republican Party. And that's how we view it.
Sure, he was, and now someone else has won. But the other thing about this election is that this is the first time in the history of the United States that a woman, and that too a woman of Jamaican and South Asian origin, will be the vice president. And that is a story that's generating huge interest in India, because even though it's only partly, Kamala Harris does trace her maternal origins back to this country, and especially in their ancestral village in Tamil Nadu, it's Diwali that seems to have come early.
To the woman most responsible for my presence here today, my mother, Shamala Gopalan Harris, who is always in our hearts.
America set to get its first woman vice president. Kamala Devi Harris scripts history. First non-white and Asian to occupy the second most important office in the world's oldest democracy.
We did it, Joe. You're gonna be the next president of the United States.
Kamala Harris and President-elect Joe Biden received a grand welcome at the acceptance at Delaware. Accompanied by her husband, the Vice President-elect, in her victory speech, charted her vision for a new America.
But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last. Now is when the real work begins, to unite our country and heal the soul of our nation.
Another reason to celebrate, of course, is the election of Kamala Harris as the first woman vice president, and not just the first woman vice president, the first woman of color. Now, that's deeply symbolic to this country, that a woman of color has managed to reach one of the most senior offices in the country.
Born to an Indian mother and a Jamaican father, Kamala is known for shattering several glass ceilings in her extraordinary political career. A vociferous advocate for civil rights, Kamala has actively fought against racial injustice in the United States.
Now is when the real work begins. The hard work, the necessary work, the good work, the essential work to save lives and beat this epidemic, to rebuild our economy so it works for working people, to root out systemic racism in our justice system and society.
She had visited her ancestral village, Thulasendrapuram, when she was 5 and has often recalled walks with her grandfather on the beaches of Chennai. The village witnessed early Diwali with rangolis, firecrackers and posters and festive fervor all around.
People of Thulasendrapuram are bursting crackers here as a mark to celebrate Kamala Harris's victory, and she is now the Vice President-elect of USA. People today here feel that they have a connection with Kamala Harris and wishing her good luck. As you can see, they're giving a big thumbs up for Kamala Harris and wishing her good luck for the future endeavors and hoping that Kamala Harris will come visit this village.
There's a great expectation of Biden Harris, okay? Not so much in India, okay? But internationally, generally. So there's a great expectation of this team.
We are very much happy about it. We are very much proud about it. So as we see, we are celebrating it already. We are having a gala time.
Will Vice President Kamala Harris transform Indo-US ties? With Pratiksha Gildile in Washington, D.C. and Nagarjun Dwarkanath in Thilusendrapuram in Tamil Nadu. Bureau Report, India Today.
Vijay Choithaiwala, while on the one side it is absolutely true that there is large bipartisan consensus in the United States when it comes to India, Kamala Harris herself has taken positions which have been contrary to the announcements and decisions of the Modi government. Would that make it slightly awkward? Donald Trump didn't care about most of this, but Kamala Harris, coming also as she does from an Indian background, will be more widely tracked in India, and B, her own political ideology is quite different from that of our current ruling government. Would that be slightly tougher to reconcile with, even if the overall net picture remains rosy? Vijay Choithaiwala?
Rahul, can you just repeat the question? I lost the connection in
My question, sir, is this, that Kamala Harris over the past several months and years has taken positions which have been directly contrary to that of the Indian government. While of course there is large bipartisan support for India in the United States, will her personal political publicly pronounced positions make it slightly more inconvenient for the Indian foreign establishment to deal with her in whatever capacity we have to?
I think in the heat of campaign and otherwise also when she was senator, a lot of things might have been said and told about India, but when she becomes vice president at such an important constitutional post, she will be driven more by the interest of US and its relationship vis-a-vis India and not by the campaign rhetoric. There will be some insistences, there will be some differences, I agree with you, but there will be a very mature way to deal with it, and it will not affect overall relationship between India and US. I don't.
You make an important point. Now, I want Kanwal Sibbal to bring that out further, that her personal ideological moorings will matter less as vice president because there she has a constitutional position and there are institutional boundaries in which she needs to operate in the context of the larger India-US position.
I think you have defined it very well. Firstly, Biden himself is very well versed in the nuances of foreign policy, having been chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and then a ranking member. He has visited India. He has very well-developed views on U.S. foreign relations. So he's not going to give the vice president any particular role in the formulation of foreign policy. And if Biden, as everybody says, is going to be very institutional in decision-making and will follow the processes, then in those processes and institutional decision-making, the vice president doesn't have much of a role in foreign policy. There'll be the State Department, there'll be the Pentagon, there'll be the National Security Advisor, there'll be the Homeland Security Chief. Those are the people who are going to really look at the issues and which are going to matter in India-US relations. If on the sidelines, because of the positions he has taken and the liberal press in the United States like New York Times and Washington Post, which will continue to attack us, there is pressure on us to say something here or there. She has to be very sure she doesn't cross the constitution.
I want to see what Mr. Balachandran has to say about this because you've known her personally. Mr. Chautaiwala and Kanwal Sibbal make an important point, and it's only logical that her personal opinion on issues like the Citizenship Amendment Act, Article 370 or anything that's happening in Jammu and Kashmir and elsewhere will matter little because A, she's not directly dealing with foreign policy. The vice president has a certain constitutional role, certain roles, rights and responsibilities, which is what she needs to confine herself to. And there too, she can't take a position which is different from that of the president, who's known to be a very middle of the road kind of person. Mr. Balachandran? Can I just get Sadanan Dume in the meanwhile to answer that same question, Sadanan?
Hello.
Yeah, no, so, I largely agree with Ambassador Sibbal on this. I think we may be making sort of, too much of, first of all, the statement that she made that a lot of people talked about on Kashmir. If you actually go back and look at that video, it was just an off-the-cuff question from someone during the primaries. She clearly wasn't expecting it. And the response was actually just a pretty standard response that could have applied to any country, which is that, look, if there are human rights abuses, obviously the United States will stand with the people who are being oppressed, and we're going to be watching, right? That was that was essentially what she said. And I think the way the media and especially social media sort of blew it up in India made it seem like it was a much more considered position than it in fact was. So I would broadly agree. I do think that one area where the Indian foreign policy establishment should pay attention is the fact that for the first time after many, many years, we do see a slight fraying in the bipartisan consensus on India in Congress. Now, I don't want to exaggerate it again, and I don't want to say that the consensus has gone, but you do see, particularly in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, genuine concerns about the direction in which India is headed. And although the larger strategic issues are still front and center, I'm not sort of quibbling with that. It's not accurate to say that nothing has changed.
Okay, Mr. Balachandran, very quickly, if I can get you to respond on this. The public positions that Kamala Harris has taken on issues where she differs very clearly with the Indian government. Do you think they'll largely be tempered now that she's in a constitutional role and what she matters, herself matters much lesser than what the president says and what the view of the foreign establishment is?
Look, even when she was not part of the government, there was a difference between the language used by Jayapal and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris didn't say anything aggressive, merely she said she notes with concern, whereas Jayapal had said, I think, far stronger language. Two, she's not going to look for something which she has to say about India. All that she will do is, if somebody asks her a question, she will not say, sorry, no comment. She might make her views known. And it is something where she's not dogmatic, as I mentioned earlier a lot of time. If she can be persuaded why it is not so, she will accept it or she will try to persuade it. But I do not think, it's my personal view, that she will listen to a diktat from somebody saying what she should say and what she should not say. At that level, if you don't like what she says, you can say, look, I don't want a relationship with USA and get off, or say, sorry, we disagree with you. It is up to both the countries to resolve it, but to say you cannot say anything about anything India, I don't think she will accept it, neither will the Indians accept it.
Okay, so I'm going to leave it over there for the time being. We've had different points of view, very sharply articulated, not converging, but that is also the reality. There were differences earlier, even though there was large congruence, and there will be differences this time round. But the net direction will be a direction of deepening ties between India and the United States, and that is what matters most. And given the fact that China is the common enemy, that brings the relationship that much closer. We're slipping into a break. I'll have more for you on the other side. Stay with us. Back in a moment. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.